The early morning show continues this morning. We are going to be discussing shipbuilding and repair. Now, as you know, the government has long been talking, several governments diversifying away from oil and gas. Several industries that the country should be going into have been proposed. One of them, of course, is shipbuilding and repair. I'm joined on the set this morning by Wilfred de Gannes. He's the chairman and CEO of the Shipbuilding and Repair Development Company, as well as Persad. He's the principal consultant of Meridian Maritime Consulting. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Good morning.
Now, shipbuilding, repair is something that we don't hear much about in Trinidad and Tobago. Give me an idea of what the development company is all about.
Well, basically, the development company is to promote and develop the industry. Shipbuilding and repair is sort of new to our country, although we have been involved with it over 100 years, especially at Chaguaramas at the Carry Dock facility. Basically, the company is the commercial business entity of the Trinidad and Tobago Shipbuilding and Repair Cluster, which is an initiative of the Ministry of Trade and Industry to help diversify our economy away from the energy sector. The marine development has been identified as one of the targeted areas where the government has identified they would like to continue in this diversification trust.
All right, Mr. Persad, give me an idea of, you mentioned to me off air just now that you're also part of the shipbuilding and repair company, but what does the Meridian Maritime Consulting do, and how is it a part of this whole development company?
Well, just as you said, Meridian Maritime Consulting is just one of the cluster companies that forms part of the shipbuilding and repair cluster. Back in 2007, through an initiative of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the shipbuilding and repair cluster was formed, which Wilfred is the deputy chairman of, deputy leader, of the shipbuilding and repair cluster. Now, today, the cluster forms some 35 companies, private enterprises, the majority of which are local enterprises, and some of them are foreign companies. Now, Meridian Maritime Consulting is just one of them. My background has been primarily in the maritime industry, in offshore supply vessels, in tugboats, basically vessel management, so a bit of vessel ownership as well. So the cluster itself is a formation of several companies that have experience in maritime, in shipbuilding, in naval architecture, in marine engines, in all different forms and facets of the shipbuilding and maritime industry that have been pulled together and combined to generate ideas and help with the development of the industry in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, you did mention that it's down at Carry Dock. A lot of this is already taking place for several years now, of course. But yet you're pioneers in a sense, because to actually become the first set of people who are trying to achieve bringing this to a state where it can bring revenue that we diversify away from oil and gas is no easy achievement. At what stage of development are we at this point in achieving that?
Well, basically at present, in the last 3 years, the amount of new ships that have been built has increased tremendously. And the result of this enormous construction program that is normally carried out in developing countries such as Japan, China, and South Korea, there's also the need to maintain these ocean-going vessels which sail thousands of miles away from the countries where they were originally built. So therefore, with Trinidad being well geographically placed in the world, it offers us an ideal opportunity. We have something like 31,000 ships that transit within 10 nautical miles of our country, and it's an opportunity for a country to earn valuable foreign exchange. It also provides opportunities related to both unskilled as well as skilled jobs in the sector. The shipbuilding and ship repair could also provide savings to the government. As you're quite aware, we have a lot of new purchases of vessels, entitled ferries, fast patrol craft, as well as the offshore patrol vessels. All these small ships need to be repaired. Previously, these vessels were sent abroad for repair services. So we would like to see more of these vessels being repaired here locally. The result of this would be enormous savings in foreign exchange for our country.
Well, apart from repairs, I think you mentioned we actually build ships here.
Well, not really,
Not
save
really.
and except small pirogue vessels, which
Right.
normally built in fiberglass. But when we're looking at developing the shipbuilding sector, which is part of the cluster shipbuilding and repair, we are looking at primarily construction using steel as the primary material of construction. Fortunately, within our cluster, we have a number of companies that have that capability to build steel vessels, and these companies need to have what we call the ISO 9000 requirement. This is a quality management system that is demanded by ship classification companies such as Lloyd's Register, who we also have on board with our cluster. And this is a control mechanism that has been long in place, and it helps the ship owner and the person hiring the ship to ensure that the goods that are being transported by these vessels are in safe hands. And it's a requirement for the cargo insurers as well that the ships are classified. So careful quality management is always important.
Andrew, let me ask you, the 2011 budget did mention shipbuilding and repair as one of the ways to move forward. So it wasn't just left out there floating, it's something that was directly mentioned. Of course, this will create some sort of excitement within the cluster. You have been just going about all along, and here it is, a major responsibility being placed on the cluster.
You're absolutely right, and it was something that we were looking forward to. We were eagerly in anticipation of hearing the budget statements for what measures would be put in place for development of the shipbuilding industry. And here it is, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Minister Dukaran, had said specifically that there is going to be measures taken in place to develop the shipbuilding industry. And in fact, there were several measures hinted throughout the budget of development for the shipbuilding industry, such as the development of a shipbuilding program at the University of Trinidad and Tobago Maritime Institute in Chaguaramas, which is one area. He also spoke about the depreciation allowance and the wear and tear allowance that's going to be allowed for local enterprises. He spoke about small and medium enterprises development and innovation and entrepreneurship as ways in which we are going to drive the private sector forward in being involved in the shipbuilding sector. So a lot of these measures need to be expounded on a bit more so that we can get a bit of detail exactly how these things will impact and interact with the shipbuilding and ship repair development company. But I'm sure that those discussions can take place further. But definitely, Sampson, it's an exciting time, and it's a time where we actually have a pedestal from which we can actually spring forward.
And obviously, you've done your research. Other countries that actually have such an industry and the contribution it makes to the economy?
Definitely. One of the models that we're looking at, and I think Wilfred could maybe describe a bit more,
Yes,
is the Singapore model. And I'll let Wilfred just say a bit about the Singapore model.
Well, the Singapore model is basically, they have been involved primarily in ship repairs and conversions. Their ship S&R industry earns approximately $9.4 billion per annum. The industry also hires some 141,000 employees across the sector, and there's some 80 licensed shipyards. Singapore, we like to look at this island because it's similar to Trinidad in terms of the size. However, we still have an advantage when we compare ourselves with Singapore in that we are better geographically placed. And I say this in relation to the shipping lines where the ships transit, to the various points of offloading their cargoes and receiving them.
Now, as you mentioned, 31,000 ships transit within 10 nautical miles of Trinidad and Tobago's coast annually. What sort of revenues are we looking at if we can even get about half of these or maybe a quarter of these ships coming to Trinidad for repairs? And how often are ships really in need of repairs, such?
Well, in terms of ships needing repairs, it's an annual process. The ship inspection, which is normally done, as I said, by the ship classification societies, have to be done regularly per annum, especially if it's a ship that has considerable age. In terms of employment opportunities, for example, we have identified Labre, the port which was formerly to be applied to the Alutrin smelter. We're looking to employ some 2,000 workers primarily from the Southwest Peninsula. In terms of, just to give you an idea of some of the possible revenue streams we can get, We have gotten inquiries to the tune of some 2.7 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars in the last 24 months. And the question now, we have an opportunity in Library where we can implement this shipbuilding and repair program with the support of the government, where we can convert these inquiries into actual contracts.
All right, we want to take a short break. We are discussing issues of shipbuilding and repair and how, in fact, we can create an industry out of that to diversify away from oil and gas. Obviously, we get the oil and then we put them in the ships, but we need to repair the ships and build them first. We'll take a break and come back with more. Welcome back to the early morning show. We are discussing shipbuilding and repair as part of the diversification of the economy away from oil and gas. Singapore has been able to do it, a country that is 6 times smaller than Trinidad and Tobago in terms of geographical space. And as you know, the former UNC government spoke a lot about the total quality nation that came out of the Singapore model. Can Trinidad and Tobago do it? That's what we're discussing this morning. Shipyard and repair. Andre, tell us about the number of shipyards there are in Trinidad and Tobago presently, and what is the capacity like at this time?
All right. Let me first start by saying that Wilfred had mentioned earlier that Trinidad and Tobago has been involved in ship repair over the last 100 years. So it's not something that is new to Trinidad. In fact, we have ship repair facilities in Chaguaramas. There's one facility called Caridoc, which is actually now owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago through the takeover from CL Financial. There's one at Inter-Isle Construction, which is also in Chaguaramas, which is a bit smaller than the Caridoc facility. There is one just opposite the Twin Towers in Port of Spain. It's called Maritime Preservation, which is also a very capable ship repair facility. There's a fourth repair facility down at Guapo in Point Fortin, which is owned by Tucker. Also another capable facility. Now, I've used these facilities myself, which is why I'm able to say quite confidently that we have very capable ship repair facilities. Just this year, I took 2 vessels over to the Caridoc facility, and I've also used ship repair facilities internationally in the United States and elsewhere. And I can speak confidently to say that our ship repair capability in Trinidad and Tobago is on par, right? It's on par with our competitors throughout the Caribbean and worldwide.
So there is already an industry. It's really just to develop it to the extent that it can contribute significantly to the GDP of the country.
Right, certainly. What we have is a ship repair facility. Naturally, shipbuilding is the next natural evolution to ship repair. When you look at the capability of some of the human resources that we have in Trinidad for things like welding and fabrication, for electrical, for electronics, for pneumatic services, hydraulics, sandblasting, for things like electronic repairs, radar, and gyro compass repairs. All of these services are present in Trinidad and Tobago, and they are presently being used. And the good thing about having those services available in Trinidad is when we have to go to the next evolutionary step, which is shipbuilding, what essentially we have is further training and education that is needed to develop that.
What size of ships are we already repairing here, and what is the projected, what we're looking at in the future that we would like to become? Okay.
Well, at the Caridoc facility, for instance, they have a dry dock facility which has a capacity of 23,000 deadweight tons, which is typical the size of a bulk carrier. It's a
Panamax size.
Panamax size bulk carriers that we are currently repairing. And typically the revenue that you would produce from a vessel like that would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
US dollars.
Yeah, US dollars.
Yeah. A steel plant in Trinidad and Tobago, we have the capacity to support shipbuilding?
Well, the previous administration did talk about setting up steel plant, that is the SR steel mill. Unfortunately, because of the present world conditions,